Hello guys, and welcome back to 3/4 Home. Yes, we're playing 3/4 Home again. We're going to get straight into this. And now we are talking to the brother Ben. Ben, Dad says I can have your computer if you crash or get stuck into a tornado. Hello to you too, Ben. He also said that I might be able to have your room, but I'm holding off to see if it's more damaged than mine after the storm. But before I commit, that's smart of you. But I'm not dumb, so you shouldn't be surprised. Are you surprised? Not even a bit. You shouldn't be surprised. I'm not dumb. No, you're not. Mum and Dad are arguing in the corner. They don't think I can hear them. What are they arguing about? Mum thinks we should be in the storage room on the east side of the house and she slipped further in the ground. Is it? No. One of the walls is only halfway covered. She's also afraid that the water heater here could explode. If that happened, we'd be killed even if we were in the other room. We'd burn to death. So you guys are in the safest room. We're at least likely to be killed by a tornado if we are in this room, but there's no guarantee in either room. Tornadoes and debris are unpredictable. Sounds like you've thought this out. It's just common sense. Are you scared? Yeah. Anything I can tell. How? You're not even here. I'm your sister. I don't understand what that has to do with it. Call it intuition. I must have given you some kind of clue. Intuition is just deductive reasoning that people don't realise they're doing. That's what it was. Okay, I really don't feel right. Anything I can do to help? How? We can just talk. What about? How are you doing? Really? You've been writing a lot lately, haven't you? Yes. Do you want to read me one of your stories? Like how we used to tell stories to each other. All of my stories are upstairs. It would be dangerous to go upstairs during the tornado, you know. I didn't think about that. I wrote one today. I can tell it to you. You remember the whole thing? Yes, I have an excellent memory. That's right. Are you ready? Wait, what's it called? No, we'll just go, I'm ready. A village sat in a wide valley cut high in the mountains. There was a place to plenty, a gash of green and the other white cold state rising above all sides. Those living in the villages called the place View, though these who lived higher in the mountains, mining for precious glints of yellow and blue, called it the Tough. Those in the valley treated this name as an insult, for they thought it was a name unfit for their fair village. The people of View, or the Tough, had lived there for centuries. They were mostly farmers, though a fair number of merchants made a home in the valley for most of the year, save for the month when they would venture upward in the mining towns to sell the harvest bounty at a premium. They would return home with bags filled with chips of yellow and blue tied to their fine leather belts, clicking brightly with the wealth. The next year, they would trade half the shining flints to the farmers for a share of the harvest that they would, in turn, cart up in the mining villages yet again. Food flowed up and outward from the valley, and the yellow and blue would trickle down, gathering in the valley like a collection basin. This continued for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. Dozens of generations of farmer fathers and merchant sons were born, grew wealthier, and were buried beneath the plush pasture of the valley, until the beast descended. The mining folk in the high reaches of the mountains had passed tales of the beast around for as long as their history stretched. At the highest peak of the northmost mountain, they said, lived the beast. It watched in all directions through slit eyes, judging those below, binding its time until it would enact a righteous calamity. It was a nightmare of immense and terrible power, the miners would whisper. But it was also a patient creature. It would wait until it felt the world below had become irredeemable before unleashing such destruction that its judgment would be fulfilled. It was simple, binding its time until an age of selfish sin before cascading down an era of sickness and madness, of fire and char and blood. And one day, after hundreds of generations of farmers and traders had lived and died in the valley, it appeared in view. The beast had risen in the Tough. It appeared without warning, with neither sound nor fury. It was simply there, I like how they've made the atmosphere to the game a lot different as well. Like, they've stopped all the background noise for this story. It's really cool, really immersive. Curled atop 4 legs, streaming beneath rising from a black moor, leathery wings folded in on its hulking shape, it towered over the centre of the village, ominously silent. It did not move. It did not even seem to be living, save for the sleeping steam billowing from its slime-slicked snout. The village's warriors were called to arms, the ceremonial horn echoing off to the walls of the valley, arching toward a pregnant silence. After a moment stretched thin, they rushed toward the beast, their spears angled at its massive form. The rest of the village watched from the safety of an embroidered drapery at the spears splintered against the beast's hide, the honoured blade shattering the glass. The warriors fell to earth, crying out while their arms, as splintered as their spears, hung lifeless by their sides. The beast did not stir. The village's warriors were buried the next morning, having perished during the night. Those who tended to their wounds would later claim their eyes turned black, as if the light was leached from within. The people of Yu or the Tough gathered to discuss what was to be done. The beast slumbered, but for how long? Why did it sleep? And perhaps most worryingly of all, how did it arrive in their valley? Not a soul had seen its arrival. It was almost as if the thing had simply materialized in the center of the village, or some proposed it had emerged from the earth itself. But if that were the case, how would the soil, their valuable, rich, rare earth, the source of the plenty and their affluence, birthed such a terrible creature? Some were quick to suggest leaving the valley. "We could ascend into the alcoves in the mountains," the merchant said. "With no one to tend the fields, how would we eat?" the farmers countered. The villagers decided to stay in their valley. The creature slept and the creature breathed with each breath. Its skin rolled, animating the thorny black scales into a rolling obsidian brine. But it did not ruse. It did not move. It did not rain terror from the skies, nor did it consume children by score. It slept. The farmers continued to tend their land. The merchants made their yearly trek up the treacherous trails to collect what little chips of wealth the miners had collected in exchange for their farmers' yield. Year after year, however, they seemed to be a little less. A little less harvest, a little less yellow and blue passed around in the snowy alcoves, carved for unforgiving rock, a little less green in the valley, a little less light. This continued for 20 years until the day it began to rain. The people of Yu or the Tough watched the clouds roll in not from the south, whence the clouds usually arrived, laden with water from a faraway sea, but from the north, where there was but ice and stone and mountain. The rain dropped the valley in a dampness that did not relent, but instead crept into every corner. The mountains themselves seemed to sweat and pour water into the valley. The water carried with it a quiet rot. The first harvest after the rains began produced a meager crop, and what little could be gathered was black and mould before the merchants had a chance to trade for their yellow and blue. Their livestock fared no better. The animals began developing weeping sores that became infected and killed with a quick fever. That winter, the people of the Tough or View watched one another waste away as they began to starve. The next harvest was worse. Every last crop had turned mealy and infested before midsummer. By the end of the season, the last of their livestock was dead. The people of the Tough watched one another descend into a state of hunger madness, devouring the rotten wood slowing from their homes in slimy heaps, and the fine leather belts that once held yellow and blue, now sprouting spores of black mould. The village and its residents were rotting away. A group of villagers approached the beast after the last of their livelihood had perished, slogging through the swamp of waist-high mud to make a plea to the beast. "We are sorry if we have offended you, mighty creature. We offer ourselves to you, in hopes that our sacrifice will satisfy your hunger." In unison, the villagers submerged themselves into the tarry mud, suffocating in the muck. The beast slept. As the rains from the north continued in their third year, the few remaining people in the trough began to prophesy about the beast. It had come and brought with a great devastation, they could agree. It had brought the rains from the north, and it had brought a rot to the village that would not relent. Squatting in what little remained of their cumbering homes, they dreamt of the day that the beast would be satisfied by their penance, when it would wake and leave their valley and allow them to rebuild from their rubble. But the time will come, they said, when the beast will wake from its slumber and spread its wings, reaching from one end of the valley to the other, and with a beat of those mighty wings it will ascend aloft a squall, and the wind will lift away our rot. The villagers waited for this day to come. A generation came and went, born into the rain and long rotten in the mouldy dirt. The few survivors had long abandoned hope that the beast would return to its mountain perch. It was perpetual, a manifestation of their sin. The beast slept, until it did not. The day the beast awoke, the villagers celebrated. They watched it stretch its horrible form into shape, hide shuddering as it shook the decades of rain from the thorny scales. They sang to the beast as it stood uncertainty and reared on its haunches, unfolding the scarred leather wings from one end of the valley to the other. The time of the beast's departure had finally arrived. The time had come for the cleansing wind. The beast beat its wings, emitting a tired and ugly groan as it lifted from the sudden earth. With a final sigh, it shot high into the air, sending a great gust of wind through the valley that topped what dismal dwellings remained haphazardly standing. I'm not too sure what that word is, so I apologise for getting that wrong. The valley was wiped clean. The villagers were knocked from their feet by the rush of wind as they struggled upon upright. They felt the sun on their skin for the first time. They rejoiced, their pale forms dancing in a pitiful display of frightfully. They could return to the ways of the ancestors. They could know plenty. They planted their first crop before the grass had even been greened, with a new foundry acutely from the hunger pains that plagued them constantly. But the grass did not wax green, and the crops did not grow. The decades of rains from the north had left the earth poisoned. There was no going back. They would not plenty, nor would they silence the consent muttering of their stomachs. Their rot had been lifted, in its place sterility. The sun shone, but it was upon a new land, a land turned to jagged, unforgiving slate, where perhaps bits of yellow and blue could be scavenged if one dug deep enough to find a petrified leather belt. That's the end. You remembered all that? I don't have it with me to read. I obviously remembered it. Did you like it? I did. I'll print you a copy. What were you doing at Grandpa's house today? Just visiting, but there's no one here to visit. I just wanted to see it. Oh, why didn't you ask if I wanted to go? You were still asleep. You could have woken me up. Did you want to go? Not really. Did you find anything there? Something for you, actually. What is it? A guitar pick. Why would I want a guitar pick? Oh, that looks really awesome. That's cool. It's really old. It's cool. You could use it. I don't play guitar anymore. We could play it together. I don't want to. Why not? We used to. That was before. Now I don't care about guitar. Oh. You can keep the guitar pick. I don't want it. I will. Are you crying? What? No, I'm not. Is it because that Jesse person kicked you out of your house? Then I don't. Or is it because you had to move back home since you couldn't find a job? Mom and Dad are worried about both those things. They think you were sad because of it. And on that note, we're going to leave this episode here. So if you guys are enjoying this, remember, smash that like button. It's always appreciated. And if you're feeling fruity, you can subscribe to the channel as well. Man, this is actually really cool. And that story was absolutely awesome. So I'm really enjoying this now. So I hope you guys are enjoying it too. I'll catch you beautiful bastards in the next episode.